be in the world, and I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. For some of you, it would be or will be Memorial Weekend, and I hope you've got something exciting and festive planned, even though it's during quarantine or lockdown time. Then there's also Happy Eid Mubarak. We've also had a Mental Health Awareness Week. So today I wanted to focus specifically on mental health awareness, and then just to also raise my hand up for being a mental health condition survivor and warrior, and a fibromyalgia warrior. So those two interlink somehow, and you may resonate with one or another. And what I wanted to focus on specifically is about self-care, self-love, and also about preserving your well-being, your energy as well, as a specific purpose in relation to being a creator and also somebody who wants to contribute to greater things in life. So I'm going to start off by focusing on certain characteristic traits, and then I'll explain why. So you could potentially be a person who is an empath, a carer, a rescuer, somebody who shows up in life as a leader and takes on leadership roles, and somebody who steps up when there's issues, problems, and you give your all in terms of emotional investment and also physical investment until you see things through, including solving problems, solutions. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to outline this characteristic trait is because that is my characteristic trait. Okay, and the lessons I've learned from that is that they are positives and they're negatives. Positive is that you can be somebody who has a can-do approach, that you become independent in life and are able to solve problems, also able to lead in certain situations, that you don't focus on the problems as such. You just get very involved into it until you've like expelled your energy, and then when you look back you think, oh my goodness, I should have stepped away for a little bit and looked after my own energy. So I've gone through these peaks and troughs, up and down lessons in life, where I've learned the importance about looking after your well-being and why it's so important. So the downfall of it is that you can get caught up in, while you're being an empath, carer, and rescuer, you can get up in doing for others to the point that you start to put a risk on your own well-being, and you may not realize it in the moment because you get caught up in doing something that is good. You probably could also be driven by adrenaline because that is what you thrive on, and if you are just sat somewhere, you could be bored. So adrenaline fuels you. Being in the midst of the busyness, the hustle and bustle, you love that, and being in the midst of solving problems. But then as everything else is going on, stress can start to build up. Okay, stress can start to build up, and then other stressful life factors can also start to impact on your well-being without you noticing them as well. Okay, so it's either you become less passionate about the cause or don't understand why other people are not contributing as much, or you feel as though people may not be asking you questions in terms of how you're feeling. Do you need support in this? Because you've been so used to being a go-getter to the point that everybody thinks that you've got it together and you can solve it. Okay, so these characteristics are great. They are good in terms of achieving what you want to be able to achieve in life. But then they can also be a detriment to the point that, as I've mentioned earlier, it can impact you. So there has to be a balance, especially if you want to be able to maintain a balance. And there's also something about also achieving this type of lifestyle where you're able to still fulfill your own personal needs. So I wrote two things down before I jumped on here. And the first one was, you can't pour from an empty cup. And the other one is, self-care can be mistaken for being selfish. rather than preserving well-being. Okay, so never feel that by letting go of certain factors that you've been involved in life, that you might be letting other people down. You cannot serve from an empty cup if you don't have anything to give in the end, especially if your well-being mentally and physically becomes impacted. So I'm sharing this based on the experiences that I've had. So I'm laughing about it, but in a sense, it's been the hardest lesson that I've learned. And in a previous video, I talked about what lessons have I learned as an experience of quarantine. So this second lesson that I'm presenting you with now in this impromptu video, this lesson, I was thinking that this would be like my third time that I've had to quarantine. The two times have been involuntary because the first time was due to mental health related issues. It was due to panic disorder or agoraphobia. Those are the labels that were described to me. That's what I was experiencing. I wasn't able to go anywhere for 6 months. I was just paralyzed, and most of my life I had episodes where I was debilitated physically due to experiencing anxiety and then full-blown panic disorder, which then led on to agoraphobia, where I couldn't actually go anywhere for 6 months. I had to relearn the steps on how to engage again to be able to go out. There were warning signs prior to that, but I didn't see them, or chose not to see them, or didn't actually know how to articulate what was happening because I was caught up in the hustle and bustle of being and contributing to being in a team and to leading on certain projects and contributing in my own personal life as well, that I just didn't factor everything else that was happening physically and also mentally for my own well-being until things had escalated. Then my second lesson and quarantine showed up when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, where for a year or two, the first year was physically more demanding because I basically had to a crash lesson of being forced to slow down and also being forced to reevaluate my life. So I was basically told that I needed to slow down in order to minimize crashing, in order to minimize being bedbound. And then my body and my mental well-being is now differently, it's wired differently, to the point that I can't take not slowing down for granted anymore. These are valuable things and valuable lessons I've learned, that I can't afford to be stressed. So the lessons here that I learned were, I was forced during this, I think what I'm laughing about is the involuntary quarantines, because I was forced into those situations. And it's similar to what's happening to all of us globally now, where we've had to self-isolate as a result of something major happening in the environment that's impacting all of us physically, or could potentially impact all of us physically, and it's impacted a lot more people in terms of their health and well-being. And it connects to the immune system, and so when that is compromised, and this is not the only occasion, we can be in situations where we are compromising our well-being in terms of being caught up in things which are stressful and anxiety driven, to the point that it becomes a little bit more challenging to be able to reverse it. So the lessons that I wanted to share with you is that it is, hopefully through the quarantine and lockdown, you've been able to gain some insight, like I am through this journey. Let me know what insights you've been gaining for yourself. That I think before, I used to think my health conditions were imprisoning me, or they were trapping me, stopping me from living a fulfilled life. What I didn't know was that they were showing up as gifts, which I would never ever say, or ever have thought that I would be saying that today. Why I say they're gifts? Because fibromyalgia, it's not a gift. It is the most life-challenging situation that I'll ever have to go through, like in life, or I've ever gone through in life, because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Suffering from like a mental health related condition was also challenging. Why I say they're gifts is that it's given me insight into something else which I wasn't paying consciously attention to, or I wasn't fully aware, because I was so caught up in the rhetoric of being in a fast-paced go 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 mode, to the point that I wasn't living a fulfilled life. And I was also being drawn emotionally into factors of rescuing or being a rescuer, and at times doing it unconsciously, to the point that it was at the detriment of my own well-being. So why it's gifts is because it's enabled me to slow down prior to this pandemic happening. That's why in my first video I was saying that it hasn't been a challenge for me to adjust to being in lockdown, because I've had events before in my life where I've been shown things that I needed to slow down, and I needed to focus on looking after my own well-being. And I've ended up focusing more and more on self-care. So self-care, I remember I mentioned before, it can show up as though you're being selfish, you're not being caring, but that's not the case. The case is that if you're not looking after your own well-being, the likelihood is that your cup will be empty. Okay, if you're being drawn into toxic relationships where people can help themselves and they're not helping themselves, and you're being burnt through that, it can be through work or it can be through personal, then the likelihood is that when you want to pay attention to self-care, you may not even have the fuel to be able to serve yourself, to be able to take care of what needs to be taken care of. So it's about paying attention to early warning signs, or not even letting the warning signs develop, so that you have more moments where you are empowering yourself or enabling yourself to look after yourself, and being okay to step away from things, from energies which don't serve you best, from being okay with not being consumed by things that don't serve you best, by being okay with saying, at this moment, I do not have the energy. Maybe later on, I will have the energy to pour into something. Okay, so people who experience fibromyalgia may also relate to this, or who are fiber warriors, who are challenged by this condition, will know this, because there's an aspect, and I have this, not everybody, but the aspect is, in the beginning, I always wanted to be on the go, go, go to do things, and I also felt defeated when I wasn't tidying up, when I wasn't cleaning, when I wasn't able to jog, when I wasn't able to live like a fast-paced life. And I kept thinking, oh, all these things are being like taken away from me. I want to live my normal life. I want to be able to be doing things, you know, being busy and everything like that. But being busy does not always necessarily contribute to positive outcomes. Being busy does not always contribute to you actually achieving anything that is enabling you to actualize your greatest potential. Being busy can also be at the detriment and the cost of your own health, at the detriment of not fulfilling what is your true purpose and your true calling in life. Being busy can mean being caught up in everybody else's dialogue. Okay, that's why self-care is so essential. It gives you that moment to reflect on and to tap into things which truly define who you are, and also the type of energy that you are able to expel and give out, especially in situations where you know that things can be helped. Okay, so it's being awakened to things which can be helped. I'll put my hand up, this also aspect where I've fallen into things which I've believed they can't be helped, but in reality they can be helped. Why they can be helped is that as adults we have this capability that it's choice. That's the one I struggled with, choice. We have choices in life, even if it takes us a while to get there, to help ourselves. Why we choose to do that is that it's for our own well-being, and it's also for the well-being of others. Okay, so I'll give you an example. If I chose to ignore self-care, then the likelihood is that I could be putting my own physical and mental health well-being at risk. So that means that somebody else would also need to look after me, or somebody else in a caring component, a staff member, would need to look after me. Obviously there's situations which can't be helped, but it's the situations that you can help that enable you to have this empathy towards yourself, this kindness to say, I need to look after myself, my own well-being, because it is important, because I also need to be able to have enough energy so that I'm being mindful that I'm not compromising other people or in what is happening with me when it can be helped. Okay, so I just want to be very clear, because I don't want to make it seem as though every situation can be helped, because we find ourselves in situations sometimes which can't be helped. It's only when we become self-aware, self-conscious, and when we can physically and mentally are able to be mindful of those things, or to learn or to see the signs, then that's when you have a choice in being able to adjust your own well-being for your own self, for other people, and also for the greater good. Because ultimately you are slowly and progressively filling your cup up. So when you're filling your cup up, you're not pouring all of it out to the point that you've got nothing to give, but you're filling it up so that you've got a little bit of spaces to contribute to and give a little bit of your fuel. So I end off with is never leave things to the end where you feel that you're in this position where you're trapped and you can't get out, in terms of looking after your own well-being and welfare, where it can be helped. Where you can do it, start to slowly take time out so that you still have moments where, even if there's small tiny moments, where you're able to rebuild and have this vehicle where you can still optimize yourself to your best abilities. And for myself, the hardest lesson has been being forced to slow down. I have no choice now, living with fibromyalgia, to say I'm going to put myself in situations where they're going to be stressful or where they're going to be busy or manic, because my body physically and my mind just can't take it. So I've become very self-aware, to the point that I've had to be very, very mindful of slowing everything down and being okay with saying no when I can't, because that's the reality of it all. So I hope by connecting with me, you've resonated with what I've shared, and I hope that also by focusing more on self-care. I think that the reason why this topic came to mind is that my community, some people are talking about not being able to achieve goals because they get easily distracted. So part of that paying attention is about some aspects of what is distracting you, a reason of not being able to also spend some time on self-care, to reevaluate where you're investing your energy on. So self-care also enables you to have those moments where you're able to reevaluate where you need to focus your energies on, so that you can then also become more consistent in actualizing your goals. And when you start to do that, you start to regain a healthier balance where you're able to optimize on a continuous basis, but not to the detriment of your own well-being, but on a more balanced level where you're able to give out as much as you can, and also you develop relationships which become more meaningful as a result of lessons learned. Meaningful because people you connect with will mutually want to be there for you and also contribute to filling your cup up. Ciao for me for today, and let me know what your lessons learned in life have been, how you're investing your time during the pandemic in terms of looking after your own well-being, self-care, and how you measure your cup in terms of the goals you need to focus on in life as well. Bye.